Hey, I think I'm going to try to add smaller pieces of content in about things that I'm just interested in, and I think it'll end up being pretty useful. I'm also going to switch over to, I think, using the terminal for most of the work, so I can record it using ASCII-NEMA, and it's all copy and pastable at the end. For now, what I wanted to talk about was a new feature they're adding to TypeScript in 3.4 this month, called const assertion types. It's not out yet, but it is a pretty cool feature. They describe it as a const assertion that favors immutability. So I want to go over how that's going to look and some examples of why you might want this and how it looks today. So let's start by kicking off the recording in the terminal. I will clone my template into a new workspace for this showcase. Then go into that workspace, start up tmux. I'm going to be using yarn instead of npm because the install should be a lot faster. So yarn install, it should be all cached locally. Great. Whereas npm takes a ton of time. Although something about this workspace seems to be taking a ton of time anyway. But let's just make sure I have everything in here. I'll be using Vim for most things. Okay, so we don't actually want any of the React stuff. We're just going to keep it simple. Throw a console.log in there. Make sure I can actually build everything once it gets installed. Cool, everything's installed. So right now I should be able to run that file. Great. So next thing we're going to do is use npm to view the versions of TypeScript that are published to npm. And I'm assuming Microsoft has published a preview for developers of the next version, which isn't out yet. So we can use yarn to add that version, hopefully. It's the same syntax as npm. Let's see. Okay. Did that work? Yep, good. Okay, and I'm going to install one more thing because I want to show that as an example. Mutable.js, another library for JavaScript. Okay. So next we will take the example that they gave and make sure this runs so we know that we're all set up. There. And if that builds, then we're good. Okay. So they gave a nice example here of what's different about using const in 3.4 versus not using const in 3.3. I'll just copy this. Without const, this would look like a number to the compiler. Without const here, this would look like a number array to the compiler. And without const here, we would have a object, the text of a string type. So this lets you tell the compiler that you should treat this as the exact type that you see it as, plus make it read-only. So let's give a quick example of how that might be useful. So if you have something like an interface for a person with something like a first name, a second, last name string, and something like a address, which is an array where the first element is their state and the second element is their zip. So we'll have types for those two, where state is Washington or New York or Maine, all the places I've lived. And the zip codes are, that's one. I don't remember any from Maine. So far so good. Let's say we have, we're making a library right now. So this is our library code. Let me just start this for a second. Cool. And then we have a function that we're exporting for people that use our library. We'll call it function do stuff. And we'll say it takes in a person, and it just logs out the person's first name. So now imagine our users using the library. If they have these person objects like this, const my person is equal to something with the first name of foo, last name of bar, and an address of Washington and 2. Then if they attempt to use our function do stuff with their person, then they will get an error. So if I save this, then an error will pop up. Right. Because first name is a string, which is good. Last name is a string, which is good. But address is a string array. So this is the problem. TypeScript says that this is a string array as of right now. And the only way to get it to not do that is to know about the type that you want it to be. So you can explicitly cast it as the tuple. That should work. Or you can say, you should be able to explicitly say that my person is a person. Then that's okay too. But the bigger the object, the more inconvenient doing all of that is. So what they've done is they've added a as const cast, which just says, take this thing and make it the type that it is. Don't wrap any of its subparts with more generic types. So if I save this, then there should be another error because the second thing it does is make every field read-only. So we have to go make our person read-only if we were to take advantage of this. Oops. So this should be sufficient. Yeah. So that's kind of annoying, but it's better to be read-only anyway. I kind of wish it was the default for TypeScript, but it is what it is. I'll give one more example using the immutable library. So I'll go up here and I'll import immutable, and immutable is a cool library. It lets you use objects that can't be changed in JavaScript. And the way they do that for something like an interface is through a record type. So you can say const person record creator is equal to immutable record, and we make you supply what the default values are because everything has to have some value. So we can say first name is going to be something like that, last name something like that, and then for the address we can say it'll be something like, maybe we'll just give it the default address of this. Yeah. So the problem here, just like the last problem that we had, was that let's disable the unused parameter checks. I don't care what that right now. Cool. Maybe. Is there oh, here, another one. All right. So person record. Now we can say const first person is equal to a person record creator with some values. These time these are real values. So that means, and we'll make the address empty, and it'll use the default of this. So if we were to use these kinds of objects, then we would say that our do stuff thing takes in a immutable record of person. Cool. And now we seem to be using that kind of object instead. So we're going to say, oops, down here, we're going to use this thing instead. We'll call it the same thing as it was, my person. And now it's complaining for the same reason. It thinks that the thing inside of the record type is a string array, not that it's this. So one thing we can do now is we should be able to say that this is as const. Actually, we can say right here as const. Oh, we don't want that actually. We want this. Yeah, we don't want these to be cast to their literal types. We just want this one to be cast to its literal type. So this is going to be like something that people end up sprinkling around when they want to say, like, hey, TypeScript, don't make this a generic list of strings. Make it the thing that it actually is, and nothing more. So hopefully that's useful. Hopefully that's interesting. I'll publish this up. The recording of the terminal should be fully copy-pastable. And I will give links to the actual pages. So, see you soon.